Hello everyone and welcome back to Fire Emblem The Road to Ruin, a Fire Emblem 7 ROM hack by Primefusion. I'm your host Pandan, and today we are going to look at the credits, and we're going to talk a bit about each of the units, how they performed, and just my overall feelings on the project, and a little bit about what's next. So, excited to get this one in the books, and it's pretty cool that there's actually credits. I know Chair says that no one downloads the credits, so Prime went through and put it into his game. So we'll see the credits roll, and we'll get to talk about each of the units. I had a great time with this hack. It's a fun project. I know I complain a lot, but I think it's really, for me, more about like critiquing and looking at this like a case study. Like, you can look at anything and appreciate the good things, but you can also comment on the things that need improvement. Project Director, Primefusion, excellent work. Excellent work, Prime. Really big kudos to you. I definitely have a lot of praise for the monumental accomplishment. Portraits. Those are some names. Nick T, Len, L95. A lot of older names I don't really recognize there, but some classic staples in the community. Definitely recommend you look at their art, animations. Blind Archer, Halberdier, I know. Arch is in there. Hextator, Shadow of Chaos, I think did a lot of them. I don't know some of these older names, man. It shows you how like community changes over time. Additional sprites. Lord Glenn, Gabriel Knight Aggro, Seulor. Okay. Those names are still around. Lord Glenn has a lot of really good icons too you can use for free, which is very generous of him. Beta testing. Veno. Damn, dude. Good for you. On the credits screen. I need to do this for my shit, man. This is cool. Special thanks. Oh, that's nice. Nintendlord. The creator Feditor. Nintendlord's... I think he's the creator Feditor. Nintendlord's like ROM hacking. It's like... I'm trying to think of like the right way to frame. I don't want to say ROM hacking god, but he's certainly like the founding father of ROM hacking. All right, let's look at the turn count. Nothing too impressive at all here. Chapter 4, definitely the best chapter in the game. Yeah, we crushed Chapter 19 Interlude in one turn, that's for sure. Aaron. What did I say about Aaron? I felt like Aaron's defense is really good. I dislike how he drops out of the story so quickly after like he kind of gets set up to be like this protagonist. But he was a fine unit. He supports O'Reilly, so that was good. Not really too much else to say on him. I think just like units like that, man, it's tricky. It's tricky. I wish he would just be a regular paladin. Marish just needs more stuff to steal, and she needs pick. But stealing the Ironwood at the end was super clutch. Save us some time. O'Reilly. I would say O'Reilly is probably one of my favorite units in the game. I can't believe I missed out on him last time, where I just kind of slept on him pretty heavily. Him with longbows was really, really useful. Really good unit. Kristoff, haven't done something big. Not really much to say about Kristoff. The dude suffers heavily from his join time. If he joined at the start of his join map, or joined like right when deployment slots weren't getting so thin, he would be much better off. Lenora was pretty solid. Healer. Callista didn't really do too much. She's a nice little backup healer if you need. I think the Samuel just like was really screwed. He didn't grow very well at all. Unfortunately. Sylvia also is very useful as my second healer until, you know, we just got like a deluge of staff users. I just didn't like Joran. I don't know, man. I just did not really care for Joran. There's something about him. Yoran, I should say. Something about him just like didn't really sit right with me, even though he was pretty decent early on. Buck just didn't grow well. He really suffers from ×2 effectiveness, and also this game being a little bit more heavy on the enemy phase. Bethany, she supports Ava, but I didn't get a chance to take advantage of that, and she died. Melusine, man. I wish he got staves. That's all. I also think like promoting to Sage is nice for anima magic, but I need staves. Marveda was awesome because she got super glitched out stats. Without those, she wouldn't have been as good, and this probably would have taken a little bit longer to finish. But I would kind of feel like her character is a little flat. But I also like how like she quickly turns on the Pontiff and is like, no, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. So I give her credit for that. Russell's pretty endearing. He was useful in the final chapter. I mean, he only had 3 battles, though. I mean, Marveda was really taking the charge on that side. Hugo. Hugo's not that great. He supports Tori, which helps, but Tori's so much... Like, she's going to be around and moving. Like, he doesn't really benefit that much. Neither does she. He can't be picked up by her either. O'Reilly's a bit more well-rounded. You know, Braxton, too, for axes. Hugo's probably, like, one of the worst choices you could make, besides the Tori support. Corvin's useful when you have him, and he's a good example of, like, a unit who's, like, worth deploying when you have him. And then, like, once you get some better options, he's not that great. I used him to endgame last time, and he was fine. I've heard Braxton's good. His bases are pretty solid, but I just, like, think he's kind of a dope and wasn't really interested in his character. I didn't use him on either of my runs. I'd probably try using him next time. Tori... I can't believe I didn't use Tori last time. This game is so different when you use Tori compared to when you don't. I think Tori is definitely the best unit in the game. Hands down. Really centralizing peg. She's your only flyer. The cost of not using her is super high. Here's number 2, Ava. Jagan, very useful. Really good Jagan design. I like how she becomes... You could just like kind of really grind her up at the end of the game. It was a pretty interesting take. Very cool. Thraben, total Renault ripoff, but he's a solid priest. I like his little bit with Vance. Geralt's kind of forgettable. He did his job. He's a bard. He's high tier just for doing his bard things. Having magic is like nifty, but it doesn't really do many favors. His stats really don't matter. Lucille, same sort of thing. She's the convoy. She's not really too much to say. And then Vance. I've talked a lot about Vance. He's good when you have him for the early part of the game. He starts to slow down. I think he takes away a lot from the story. He's like... It's just too much about him. Finn. Alright, well that was quick. Let's see, what comes next? Oh no, I don't want to see this again. Let's do a little bit more of an in-depth read here. Alright. Let's talk about each of these units all together. So Vance. Fine at the start of the game. Mine particularly grew like a Myrmidon, so he struggled with strength. And once I started to promote, he kind of fell behind quickly. And then he's out of the story for a bit. And then he comes back and he's like way under-leveled. He catches up fairly quickly, but at that point you don't really even need him. Like, everything I gave to Vance post him coming back was just like cleanup kills. As a character, I think he's not my favorite, if I'm being honest. There's too much emphasis on him. I feel like Vance would serve the story better if like it wasn't always about him in every scene that he's in. I feel like in the early game it was a little bit less about him, and like once his dad got involved and there's the edge magic, it was just a little bit all over for that. He started to actively take away from the story and the experience, in my opinion, and I hope that doesn't come off as too harsh. But it's a little too whiny. I like that he's there for Ava and like kind of like grows up a bit towards the end. Like I feel like his whole arc gets resolved very quickly. His mom just comes in and he's like, oh, okay, I'm better now, which is kind of interesting. As a unit, towards the end, like, does some stuff, but like he's kind of superfluous and like his stats aren't anything special. Maybe this was a bad Vance, but like being locked to swords and not getting crit, well, Ava is getting crit and has better caps and better stats. Like Vance just doesn't really do it for me. Kind of middling all throughout, and that's okay. But he would have definitely been better served by like an earlier promotion or getting like a second weapon, I think. Not too much else to say on him there. Good in the early game though. Ava. Ava's really fun. She grows super well after she promotes, and her growth rates are absolutely insane. Like, just like a really fun Jagan unit design. Like, if you're going, like, I normally would be like hesitant about Swordmaster Jagans, but I think Ava's a very good implementation of it because you have the training sword. She's fast but not super strong. you know, she does grow in stats that are valuable besides strength up until the end. And then, like, when she does promote, her stats are still solid enough to contribute, and she grows very quickly and has good stats, and then is, like, all set for endgame. Definitely a good unit to invest stuff into. I think she's one of the best users of, like, one of the energy rings that you get, if not both of them. As you can see here, she almost caps strength, even with just one. Not really too much else to say on Ava. I think she's probably the best written character in the game. I think her art's one of the better portraits as well. I think the way her conflict with Air is handled is so much more tasteful and just like the right amount compared to like Ulrigar and Vance. Like, they're great foils from a writing perspective because they both deal with their trauma a little bit differently and their family issues a bit differently. I think Ava's approach, like, Ava just keeps it very real with Vance when, like, Vance is having this issue with his dad, and she's like, "You're being a dick." And Vance, when Ava's struggling, he just, like, goes and gives her a hug. So it's just to see, like, how they handle things differently and how they communicate differently. The way Ava's stuff is resolved with Air, it feels just, like, much more natural in some ways. But I think it's just better because we see less of it. And then Ava, when she's in charge, like, the story becomes about, like, the story and less about the character. And Ava does a much better job, I think, of kind of, like, being that window into the plot than Vance was, because Vance is always about him. But as a unit, Ava's great. 25 res, total mage killer. Really fun. Best user of, like, all of the swords that you get, besides maybe Tori if you were to grind her sword rank, but she's probably going to be your best lance user. Speaking of Tori, excellent. Being the only flyer helps her a lot, and one of the better lance users that you get. So, I mean, you see here, the story was particularly, like, defense blessed, I'm assuming. She had good res, really good speed, was doubling just about everything. When she promoted, she was just very, very dominant. I like using Tori a lot, but I think she really does benefit from being the only flyer and from having perfect availability. What could you do to make Tori less impactful? ×3 effectiveness on archers and snipers, for sure, would probably help a lot. The wing shield comes pretty late, so you still have to be careful about those things. She's not invincible, but she's still just very, very useful. Really fun unit to use. Can do just, like, again, like, the cost of not using her is so high because she can do so many things that other units can't because of her flight. Like we saw with, like, getting villages and things like that. Hugo. Hugo's kind of off to a slow start. He started off pretty strong, had a pretty middling midsection of the game. Then he promoted and, like, got a couple speed levels, and he was okay for the end. And then he got good axes and was fine. Hugo, I think, is definitely, like, I probably would have benched Hugo if it weren't for, one, that I really like his design and his character, and two, if he didn't support Tori. The Tori support probably didn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things, like I was just saying before. There's not really a lot of... what's it called? Not really a lot of reason to keep using him over some of your other axe users. Like, Braxton probably would have been more useful overall as an axe user than Hugo was. But Berserkers are fun. Brigands are fun. Supporting Tori is fun. Hugo's just a fun character. Very wholesome, very endearing. I would say probably one of the most, like, memorable characters in the game besides, like, the captain. Melusine. I would probably put Melusine right up there in, like, the top 3, at least in the context of this run. She grew really well. Her mixed bulky tanking was really good. Really powerful. Attacking with magic. I hate that she doesn't get staves, though. I really, really hate that, and I'll keep saying it. Taking staves away, just, like, not what I would have recommended. It's nice to have a good light magic user. Her low con really wasn't that big of a deal because she was so fast. The low luck wasn't really too much of an issue most of the time. I kind of wish her support partner came a little bit earlier into the game, but not much you can do about that. She was good. As far as, like, general design, like, really powerful up front. Like, she was one-rounding things, like, right from the get-go, and she kind of made Samuel look like a chump, and we'll get to him later, I guess. O'Reilly. Dude, O'Reilly is a prime example of why you let your warriors use longbows. The steel longbow was definitely like O'Reilly's personal weapon. He grew really well. He's like much more balanced than Hugo. Better speed, still really solid strength, better defenses, a little bit easier for people to grab and move around if they need to. He has a pretty fast support with Aaron, who you're probably going to be using anyway because you're led to believe he's like the second protagonist. Not really too much I would change about him. I do kind of think it's sucky that he and Aaron both kind of fall out of the story because I think they're both pretty interesting characters. I love his design. I like the way his hair kind of looks too, like that color fade on the side. Definitely one of the better characters in the game, writing wise. Warriors are really fun, and it's nice that Prime gave us a good one to work with. But it's hard to imagine Buck competing with this guy for bows, honestly. Or Bethany, for that matter. He's really good. What would I change about him? Not much. I think he performs really well. He's not invincible, but he performs well throughout the game. Geralt's a bard, not too much else to say. Aaron. I don't know if this Aaron was particularly screwed, but he just didn't do any damage. I feel like he really struggled to kill things. His bulk was pretty solid, but he was never really fast enough to be that great. He picked it up towards the end a bit, I think. But for most of the time I had him, he was really just kind of like hanging around because he was O'Reilly's support partner. I probably would have deployed Braxton over him had he not been O'Reilly's support partner and given O'Reilly more attack and offenses with his nice fire affinity. I could see why people think Aaron is good. I think I just had a particularly bad Aaron. His custom class with lances only doesn't really help his case. I think, to be fair, if he was a paladin and got swords, I don't think that would have been great for him. But if he was a paladin with axes, that might have helped deal with his low strength issues. But he's one of the better tanky units in your army, and he kind of makes using Corvin feel a little superfluous. But he's also a character where it's like, the guidance set him up to be much more important than he actually ends up being, which is kind of a shame. But not really too much we can do about that. I think with like characters like this, like if you're going to promote characters to non-standard classes, like I think it should just be very clear, like through like a different class name. Like if he's going to be like a Lance Cavalier, I'm expecting Paladin. Similar with Melisine, I see Monk, I'm expecting Priest kind of thing. Or I'm sorry, I see Monk, I expect Bishop in a single promo game. This type of promotion I think works better in like a split promo environment. But being locked to Lances does kind of bite for him. Just a little bit, but not terribly so. Thraben. Thraben's really useful. He's got decent bulk, good magic, good ranks too. He's definitely like a very good Sylvia replacement. And he does his job. I think, yes, he's rip-off Renault, like, to the core. But I like his palette. And his conversations with Vance are pretty good during that part of the game. Kind of bringing Vance back to reality. Not really too much I would change about this character. I think this is like a very like well done like pre-promote filler bishop that you can use if you want like some decent staff range or just want to use a different healer. Not much to say about Marveda other than that like with her stats have worked, she's great. Character-wise, I really didn't like her support with Melusine. It just felt kind of off. I feel like it's hard for me to break down why I'm not like super crazy about Marveda. I like that she's like willing to hold the Pontiff accountable and isn't just like a sycophant, but she I don't know. I feel like she's just kind of there. Maybe I'm not like reading into it enough, but she was very useful at the end. Like the end game was so much easier with her. Very good unit. Even without the busted stats, I think she would have still been very useful. Callista, kind of like Thraben, but less good. Honestly, like Thraben's stats, they're better in every way. Callista joins just a little bit earlier and at a lower level, to be fair, but you're not going to have that much room to level up like a primary healing unit. Callista was also, I think, added to the game before Lenore existed, so she was your only dark magic user until Prime added Lenore to be that second healer. I didn't get much use out of her, but again, fine healer. She gets Luna. You could do some neat stuff with her if you're so inclined. Bethany's stats are underwhelming, but if you didn't train Buck and you're not as bow obsessed with O'Reilly as I am, she's probably going to be your best bow user. Having a mount, she has the best aid in the game, I think. So she's actually someone who could pick up Hugo, which is pretty unique. She does support Ava, which is pretty useful. Nomad Troopers are a fun class. She's got good ranks in bows, decent rank in swords. You could probably make this unit work a lot better than I did. I would be more inclined to try and use her more next time. But by the time she joined, and just given the way my army was, I didn't really feel like I needed her very much. But I like that we got a Nomad Trooper in this game. They're fun. Maris needs pick and more stuff to steal. I was a little disappointed that there wasn't really more use for her besides stealing the Iron Rune at the end. And there aren't very many lockpicks to take either, so you're mostly using keys to get stuff anyway. So it's like, why do I have this thief? Why am I deploying them? I like that she gains levels pretty quickly. Decent res, good speed. But just not a very like satisfying thief to use, I would say. I feel like when people see Rogue, they think utility, and to not have pick, which might just be an FE7 limitation, I don't know, I think kind of hampers it, or at least like more lockpicks. Because otherwise it's like, why am I using this kind of crappy Myrmidon with Thief Flare? Her character's very straightforward. I don't think she's that interesting, but she works. It would be nice to have a second Thief to juxtapose with her, but this game is very small cast. Sylvia, she heals. She had good res. She took some hits early on when I needed her to. Not really too much else to say about her. Very standard early game cleric unit. I don't know how you would have made her better than like some of the other healers that you get. And if you're like me and favored Lenora, because Lenora's a bit bulkier, Sylvia's probably going to fall by the wayside overall. But if you want a second healer, I think Sylvia's right on for it. Convoy, not interesting. Corvin. Giving Corvin axes and lances is pretty nifty, despite having 4 move. I think if you are going to leave Armor Knights with 4 move, giving them 2 weapons is probably a better way to counterbalance that. Not really much else to say about him. He's got really good bulk when you need it. He doesn't get doubled too much when he joins. I think he definitely kind of falls off pretty quickly, unless you invest in him. But when you get him, he's immediately better than using Kristoff. And he's going to earn that like last deployment slot, I think, better than some of the other units you get. And when you have him in those chapters where you have those big deployment slots, kind of like up until like the chapter with like all of the playable generics and the mountain in the middle, I think that was the last time I deployed him. I think he's pretty useful up until that point, but then kind of falls off. Definitely a lower tier unit. Gets hurt by the 4 move of these as these maps get bigger, but during those early chapters, he's really your best defensive unit. Once you have Aaron and he starts to pick up, Corvin's extra defense doesn't really matter as much. And also, once the game starts throwing a ton of mages at you, Corvin starts to really be a little bit less impactful. So, good while you have him, but nothing special. Braxton, kind of skipped him, not really too much to say. I find characters like him kind of interesting. He's just kind of like dopier Makalov. He probably would have been good if I invested in him, but I don't know. He doesn't make a great impression on me as a unit, but maybe I'm wrong. I like Axe Cavs though in general. Kristoff. Kristoff's the worst unit in the game. There is, and he suffered like his stats like for his join aren't that terrible. His luck is really low, but nothing about him stands out. He's got less strength than Corvin. He's got less speed than Tori. He's got less luck than both of them. He's got less defense than Corvin. He joins when like you're making like a deployment decision of who you're going to bench, and Kristoff just offers you the least unique utility in terms of both combat, his weapons, what else he can do compared to some of the others. Halberders don't get crit in this game, which kind of stinks for him too. So he's doesn't have that going for him either. I think Kristoff would be a lot better if he joined just like, even if he joined us like 2 chapters earlier. I think enough to like get the player familiar with him first. I think he might have a better chance of being useful. But I feel like Kristoff just exists to drop lore, because he has like so many talk conversations and things like that sprinkled throughout the game. Funny character, kind of a joke, but not very good as a unit. The poor middling soldier in an FE romhack. The trend continues with Kristoff. Worst character in the game, or worst unit in the game, I should say. Yorin. Yorin's good because he's force deployed and he's got pretty decent strength. He makes good use of the steel sword early because he's doing more damage than Ava without critting. But I find that, like, compared to the other calves, he definitely is the worst. Not only because of swords, but because his stats don't really hold up once he's grown. He's got a fast support with Sylvia, which is nice, but if you want to use Lenora, who I think is a better unit, then that doesn't really matter too much. Not really a lot to say about him. I just found that, like, he's definitely a character that lives and dies by his growth. So, like, if he grows well, he's probably pretty easy to invest in. If he doesn't, then he's pretty easy to drop. But there's no harm in using him during the parts where you have him, because he's your only mount during the early game, besides Tori. And he's probably doing the most damage in a single hit compared to your other units besides, like, Hugo, you know, through, like, the first, like, 6 or 7 chapters. So I give him points for that. He has some long game potential, but I feel like he definitely struggles to earn his deployment slot later on. And I find, like, his stat spread to just be, like, not very satisfying. I don't know. Kind of like this high strength, low defense, middling speed sort of unit. I don't know, something about it. With swords, I don't know, something about it just feels off to me. But maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I just don't really like using him. Poor Buck, man. Buck needs to get strength to be relevant. FE7 doesn't do Archers kindly, and The Road to Ruin doesn't do its Archers kindly either. I'm sure Buck would be better with more bows. I used him last time and he was fine, but he really didn't level up very well early on, and he didn't make a great impression on me. I didn't really miss him very much. How would I make him better? ×3 effectiveness, more flyers to shoot at. He does support Vance, though, which is really nice, but that alone isn't really worth fielding him. That's about it. As far as the other units we didn't get to talk about who died, Samuel starts off pretty decent, but I felt like mine didn't grow very well. Getting staves and a mount is nice for him. I know some people really swear by him, but I didn't think he was that special. Lenora, kind of similar. She's a healer. Getting dark magic's nice, but by the time she promoted, she was about to die, so it didn't really work out for me too much. Gracia we skipped because of that map. I didn't want to go back for her. Overall, I would say Tori, Ava, probably like S tier. A tier, probably like Melusine, O'Reilly, and then like everyone else kind of in the middle, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot of I feel like you could swap characters around and like not really have too different of results. But there's a few who are like must use and a few that are like probably don't want to bother with. But there's a lot of like I'd say the range between like upper mid and lower mid in tiers in this game isn't really that significant. Unless you're talking like really raw, pure efficiency, which I'm not. As far as like my overall thoughts on the project, it's fun, it's clean, it's easy to get into, it looks beautiful. It definitely suffers from a lack of anti-turtle incentives throughout the game. There's some like jankiness going on at certain points gameplay-wise, but it's fine. It works. My voice is starting to go, so I'm gonna have to cut this one a little short, and I have to go to work in like a half hour. But yeah, this is fun. It was a fun hack. Still would say it's my favorite full-length hack. I think it still suffers from like older design principles a lot. The best maps were Chapter 4 with the escape. I think the Destroy Supplies chapter was one of the better ones too. The Switch chapter, Chapter 16, I thought was one of the more innovative ones. Most of the others don't really stand out to me. I like the one with the lake in the middle and the boss charges you. That's pretty early, where you fight like the lady sword cav or whatever. That chapter I remember being pretty fun. Yeah. Worst chapters. Nothing stands out to me as like super bad. The prologue, no, I'm kidding. The prologue's nothing special, but like you could approach it. I think I talked about it then. There's some minor tweaks you can make to that. And I'm trying to think, man. What were some of the worst chapters? The Melusine Fort chapters kind of just like has a weird flow to it that I didn't really care for because of that like false hallway that doesn't lead anywhere. Some of the bigger castle maps were slow. That early route map with Kristoff desperately needed an anti-turtle to keep me going. Yeah. But most of the maps were fine. They're playable. This hack has no major blockers to like getting through it, which I really like. Yeah, the generic chapters, which I don't even really consider, they're cutscenes basically. They don't really offer you much and they're very little consequence. But it was a very neat idea. I'd say it's kind of fallen flat. I think a lot of people don't like it, but I don't think that should discourage you from playing the game. They're very easy to just kind of skip through if you don't want to play them. And if you do, they're fun little challenge maps, I suppose, to like kind of take a break from the main story. From like an incentive standpoint, there is none, and that kind of stinks. But hey, it's Fire Emblem. And that's pretty much all I got on this. I think I've said enough. I've been talking about this game for a couple months now in every video. So you'll just have to go back and find my opinions there. Still highly recommend it. Probably the best full ROM hack out there. And that's all I got for you. So guys, thanks again for watching. This has been Road to Ruin, Fire Emblem 7 ROM hack by Primefusion. I probably, like I was saying in the last video, I probably won't be doing something like this again for a while, where I play an older hack and revisit it. I think I wanted to do this for myself, but also to show off that the hack is better than I think people give it credit for. This hack definitely played a major role in my own inspiration. Like, as I was playing, I see a lot of parallels with like things I subconsciously added to Vision Quest that were also present here, which I'll let you find out as you play through that. But I would say this is a pretty solid ROM hack overall. It's fun to play. Some of the characters are good. There's nothing really that bad about it. It's hard to say anything too negative beyond just like some of its design decisions, but nothing that like really inhibits the player. There's nothing that's like, ha, F you to the player, which I think is really key and makes this game a lot easier to play and get through. I think it doesn't really offer a ton of replay value because of the small cast size, which I think really hurts the overall experience. This cast size is so small and so limited. Some of the class choices are a little zany, and I'm not fully on board with, but the game is really pretty to look at, and it's well invented. So that's all I got for you guys. My name is Pandan. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time for whatever's next. Until then.